มึงเคยคิดปะถ้าพวกเราเป็นแฟนกันมันจะเป็นยังไงวะกันมันก็ดีอยู่แล้วว่า
ชอบกันแล้วให้เป็นเพื่อนกันเป็นพ่อมึงดิ
ระวังสิ้นสุดทางเลือกคือความรักของเรายังดีอยู่ใช่ไหมในความฝันเรายังมีกันใช่ไหมใจตอนนั้นมันยังไม่ได้เปลี่ยนไปและความรักของเรายังคงเหมือนเดิมอยากจะขอให้เธอได้พูดเช่นนี้บอกกับฉันว่าใจเธอคิดเช่นนี้บอกกับฉันให้ฉันมั่นใจสักทีว่าความรักของเรายังคงเหมือนเดิมใช่หรือเปล่า
ชาตินี้ไม่รู้จะหาเพื่อนดีๆอย่างมึงได้จากที่ไหนอีก
ความรักของเรายังดีอยู่ใช่ไหมในความฝันเรายังมีกันใช่ไหมใจตอนนั้นมันยังไม่ได้เปลี่ยนไปและความรักของเรายังคงเหมือนเดิมอยากจะขอ
มึงเคยคิดปะถ้าพวกเราเป็นแฟนกันมันจะเป็นยังไงวะ
เว้ากับน้องได้บ่ว่ามันคือความจริงหรือว่าน้องคิดหลายใจน้องเริ่มสิหวั่นไหวกับคำถามที่อายนั้นยังบ่ตอบสู้บทบายตัวสนา
So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you may be. My name is Sophie, and I am the coordinator of ASSET-H&C Network, and I am very pleased to welcome you today to this webinar, Preparing for Tomorrow, Empowering Young Workers for a Resilient Tourism Industry. A couple of weeks ago, one of our members was telling me the story of a young lady called Shandy, who unfortunately lost her regular F&B position as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak. Instead of losing hope and giving up, Shandy saw this as an opportunity to open her own business. She used the technical and problem-solving skills that she gained during her hospitality training and started selling restaurant standard food with a street cart in downtown Siem Reap. Today, the small business of Shandy is making profit. She's able to cover her living expenses and even to support her family. This incredible resilient story made us think that despite the challenging times that we are all facing, we also all have great story to tell and share. And for this reason, today, we would like to discuss with you how the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on the tourism industry human resources, as well as the measures taken to address these challenges, are going to affect the employment and the life of young workers, especially the most vulnerable ones. This topic, which is important for all of us, particularly resonates with the mission of ASSET-H&C members who have been for years providing disadvantaged students with the necessary skills to take advantage of the lever for social and economic inclusion that the industry can offer. The webinar of today is going to include a keynote about putting people first in COVID-19 times, which will then be followed by a panel discussion about how to further develop a human-centered approach to the sector's recovery. After that, we will also have a networking session to which you are all warmly invited. And for that, we will share later on a link with you in the chat box, which is just below. But before all of this, let me share with you a few more information about ASSET-H&C Network with a brief video. One moment, please. So we are very excited that Pacific Asia Travel Association accepted to partner with us to organize this webinar. And I am extremely pleased to introduce Mr. Graham Harper, Director of Sustainability and Social Responsibility at PATA, who is going to be my co-host for today. Graham, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sophie. And, you know, it is an absolute pleasure to be here. I can't actually express strongly enough how much PATA is, you know, proud, pleased, you know, honored to be part of the ASSET-H&C network. Just the fact that you won the Gold Award last year is, you know, high praise in the work that you do and the impacts that you have for the youth, and also really for the future of our industry. And, you know, the whole, you know, title and theme of today's talk fits very, very strongly with what we need to be happening. So thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Again, it's a pleasure to have you with us today, Graham. One last and very important thing before we move to the webinar, I would like to take a brief moment to thank all the people who supported us in organizing this event. Our sponsor, the French Development Agency, our partner, as already mentioned, PATA, IECD team members who have been the little hands behind the scene, our distinguished speakers who are honoring us with their presence today and who will be introduced in more details shortly, our key informants who have accepted to share with us their expertise in order to help us design and prepare this event. And then last but not least, I would like to thank you all for being with us today. It is now high time that we move to the webinar. Actually, when we were brainstorming about the agenda of this event, we thought that it would be interesting to start by reflecting on the good practices that already emerge from the industry in order to preserve its people. And this is what actually inspired the idea behind this first keynote presentation.
Thank you. And Sophie, to be able to provide us a little bit more in-depth insight, we are lucky to have today with us Ms. Madhu Rajesh. Madhu has spent more than 10 years working in leading tourism and hospitality companies, including Marriott International, Hilton, Starwood, Emirates Airlines, followed by a decade more than 10 years of experience in international development, working across a range of sustainable development issues. As Chief Executive Officer of the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, formerly known as International Tourism Partnership, she has helped galvanize the world's leading hotel companies to collaborate non-competitively on key issues concerning people and planet. Please welcome Ms. Madhu Rajesh. Madhu, could you please turn on your camera?
Thank you, Graham. Is my camera on? The video works?
Yes, it is. It's perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you for those lovely words and a warm welcome. It's an absolute pleasure for me to be here today and share some perspectives with the audience. So thank you for inviting me. The hospitality industry is one which has given me a lot personally. So it's one that I'm really passionate about and have been involved with now for over 2 decades, and seen the impact it's had on the lives of many young people from a range of backgrounds, and how it's helped develop careers both within the industry and outside. So it's one that it's a privilege to be sharing experiences with. If you can move on to my first slide, please. So as you mentioned, COVID-19 has had a very huge impact on people and on our world for most of this year, and it's certainly hit the hospitality industry quite hard, disproportionately to some extent. The industry was one of the first to be impacted and will probably be one of the last to recover. So I think the topic of how do we prepare from tomorrow, how do we capture the trends that we've seen so far, and what learnings do we take on board for the future is a very timely one, and well done on coordinating that. Please, could you move on to the next slide? I'd like to start by sharing a little bit about Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, an organization that I'm really proud to represent and have been involved with now for coming up to 2.5 years. Sustainable Hospitality Alliance works with the industry. As you can see, we work with some of the world's leading hospitality companies that range in size and geographic spread. So some of the organizations that we work with are some of the world's largest hotel brands, whereas some of the others are smaller, but very nimble and innovative. And the whole ethos of the Alliance is that it brings together engaged leaders across these companies that are willing and able to drive change, wanting to share knowledge and best practices and collaborate on some of the most material issues that face the industry. In particular, I'd like to highlight the issues that the membership has agreed to collaborate on are issues of our people and planet. So human rights and youth employment is a big focus. And then of course, climate action and water stewardship are the other two areas that we work on, which are equally important. These 14 companies represent collectively about 25% of the industry in terms of number of hotel rooms globally. And it's a true pre-competitive collaboration driven solely by the knowledge that, some of the issues that we face are so big that in order to make tangible progress, collective action is needed. And I think Sophie said just when we were preparing, having a briefing, that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go further, go together. And that's the spirit that the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance embodies. Please, could we move on to the next slide? And I'd like to say, while we are waiting for the next one, please, while we're waiting for the slides to change, I'm really, really proud to share that some of the speakers on this call have had a long-standing association with the Alliance as well. So Soneva are very, very active members and very often at the forefront of some of the cutting-edge work that's being done across the industry. NH Hotels, that is a part of Minor Group, has had a very, very long-standing relationship with the Alliance as well. So great to have some of our members on the call. When we talk about employment and people issues that this pandemic has shown, that is really the reality of this. It is nobody's untouched anywhere in the world by the impact that pandemic's had. And as companies and governments have tried to sort of balance the impact of, on health and well-being with the economy, it's been a hard trade-off to make with lockdowns in almost every country. And that's meant, the economies almost come to a halt at certain times and struggle to get back on its feet at others. And that's meant large-scale job losses all over the world. And travel and tourism, which, till before the pandemic, it would have been really hard to imagine a hotel ever closing its doors, because hotels and hospitality, 24/7 business. Once you open a hotel, you don't really close it. But that's the reality of the impact on the industry, where thousands of hotels all over the world have closed, and some may never open their doors again. And that's inevitably had an impact on jobs and livelihoods. And in the travel and tourism sector, statistics from the World Travel and Tourism Council represents that, shows that nearly 100 million jobs could potentially be lost in travel and tourism. And that's because people aren't really traveling. And so, I shouldn't say people aren't really traveling. It's different for different parts of the world, but certainly tourism numbers are impacted. Flights aren't operating, and the level of activity is significantly low. Please, could you move on to the next slide? Even without the pandemic, young people are disproportionately impacted by, by unemployment across the world. What we've seen is that 1 out of 5 people are not in education, employment, or training, and that's a big issue because young people are the potential of tomorrow and need to be engaged productively in economic activities, for them to realize their full potential. And if we look at it, they are the ones that have lost the jobs far higher than other categories as a result of the pandemic. So that remains a big issue and an area of focus for us, but equally that's an area of opportunity for the hospitality industry as well, because we know, the low barriers of entry that the hospitality industry has. It is an area of opportunity for young people with low levels of education or formal qualifications to engage productively in the economy. Please, could we move on to the next slide? So I'd like to start by talking a little bit about knowing what the issues are and how our people have been impacted. How has the industry stepped up, and what are some of the key things that we've seen happen across the industry when it comes to its people? Please, could we move on to the next slide? So we saw, a number of staff when they were let go, a number of our member hotels, we saw them set out portals to help their employees look for alternative employment. We saw a number of alliances being formed where, the industry was really looking at where the skills of its employees were transferable. So we saw, a number of partnerships with sectors that were hiring, whether that was retail, healthcare, customer service, because those are all skills that the hospitality industry prepares us for. And that's where we saw a lot of the big brands in the business support their employees find alternative employment. We saw employee assistance funds and welfare funds being created by a number of companies, and generally a huge amount of focus on health and welfare of staff, as well as upskilling. And that was something that we saw across the board, coming across at a global level. So that was really, really heartening to see. I think the other thing was that pre-COVID, we saw a lot of focus on the over-tourism debate, but generally, once tourism halted and people could see the economic impact it's had on the communities, there was a widespread acknowledgement that actually hotels are they are the heart of the communities in which they're located, and they provide opportunity for local people. And that's been a big acknowledgement. I won't say revelation, we always knew that was the case, but that's being largely acknowledged by people, the role that hotels play and could play in the community. So I feel as we build back better, that is going to be even more important, both from the community's point of view, but also increasingly for the hotels, where they will want to play that active role. They will want to create opportunities and be really responsible citizens in the areas they operate, and linked with the social license to operate, if I may use that word. Please, could we move on to the next slide? So, one of our big areas of focus at the Alliance is really looking at how do we prepare, for a better tomorrow, and look at inclusive employment across, some of the most vulnerable beneficiary groups, young people, and at-risk young people being a big category. Please, could we move on to the next slide? And we believe this is the case because of, as I mentioned, the low barriers to entry. I myself started my career at the grassroots level of a five-star hotel, and through learning on the job, through the soft skills that the industry equipped me with, I have progressed in my own career. And I've seen many people, many ex-colleagues that started with, as room boys, as laundry services assistants, that have actually gone on to become, area directors of revenue management, general managers. It's an industry that really believes in on-the-job skills training and provides those progression opportunities. So, there are many examples of how people have grown. I believe some of the CEOs of the large hotel companies, or of many hotel companies, come from the grassroots level in the industry, and certainly many general managers too as well. So how do we then take this and translate it into creating jobs and opportunities for some of the most vulnerable people that really need it the most? And that's been a big part of our work. We've got a youth employment program that has worked with 200 odd hotels globally, and we work with people with low levels of skills and qualifications, survivors of human trafficking, people with disabilities, refugees, migrants, and create role models, raise aspirations, and also provide templates for the industry to then use and replicate anywhere that they want to adopt the program. Please, could we move on to the next slide? I think before I move on to human rights, I'd just like to say, our youth program operates, a model of training which is based on providing young people with soft skills relevant to hospitality, language skills, as well as practical on-the-job training that is done in hotels. During the pandemic, when hotels were closed, we had to pivot quite quickly. And what we learned was that, and we learned from the hotels that we were seeing how they were supporting the staff get into employment. We learned from them, and we actually started placing our young people that we were working with in related sectors. So be that restaurants, hospitals, we're now working with schools and other education centers and the retail sector where the skills are transferable to promote our young people and provide them with on-the-job training opportunities. And it's been quite successful. We've piloted that in India, and a number of our young people, despite the pandemic, have moved on into jobs. So I think that power of the industry, the transferable skills it creates, and the parallel opportunities that we could and should be thinking of, that's become, we always knew that, but that's become even more evident to us based on the work we've done over the past 6 months. So that's an area that I feel we will continue to do more in, and we'll see more work happening in the years to come. I'll move on to human rights, which is also an area very close to my heart and a big focus area for certainly for the Alliance, which is very much based on protecting our vulnerable communities, because some of the most vulnerable have been will probably find themselves even more at risk post-pandemic because of the scale of job losses, because of how desperate people will be for opportunities. This area of work will be even more important to us, which really looks at exploitation that people might face at the hands of middlemen when they're approaching for jobs in the hotel industry, but potentially in other industries as well, where people are willing to risk everything that they own to pay for a job because they want to provide livelihoods for their family. And this is where, the Alliance has been trying to build a body of work to say nobody should have to pay for a job. People should have freedom of movement, and people shouldn't really feel coerced to work. And that will remain a big part of our work with hotel brands, supporting them with the right policies and procedures, and building human rights in their corporate governance, training their human resources teams and other teams on the risks of modern slavery in supply chain, because it exists, and how do you handle that, in recognizing the signs of human trafficking, and working with recruitment agencies to promote to create demand for ethical recruitment. Because as we look at building back from the pandemic, I think the way we focus on our people, the way we focus on providing supporting them, that's what will make brands, that's what will help us recover quicker. And that's a duty of care that we all owe to our world as part of our, like I said, social license to operate. So I'd like to conclude on that note, but I'm happy to take some questions at a later point in the discussion. But thank you.
Madhu, thank you very, very much for that really, really insightful, powerful talk, really. A real pleasure to learn more about what the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance is doing. And, there was actually a couple points that really stood out. Just the figures that 1 in 5 youth are not in education and training. And 1 in 6 have lost their jobs because of the COVID crisis. Those are very powerful, but what I really, really appreciated was that throughout the talk, you kept going back to how these current situations are actually leading to opportunity. Opportunity was the word that you kept bringing up. And I think that actually just the collaborative drive towards the best practices, from companies that are fierce competitors with each other. And yet they have that collaborative spirit to be able to work together through the Alliance to be able to ensure that those opportunities truly are there for all the people in our world. Thank you very much. That was a wonderful talk. Sophie?
Thank you, Graham. We are slowly transitioning to the second part of this event. Actually, we believe that an event like this, which is about youth employment, could not happen without giving a voice to the youth themselves. Therefore, we would like to show you a brief video showing some students from ASSET-H&C members who will share with us their hopes and expectations about their future career in tourism and hospitality.
Because working in the tourism industry has helped to meet many people from around the world and to learn more about their cultures and cuisines.
I get my dream job is as a food and beverage service. To improve my English, to develop a good relation with another.
This sector can provide me a great opportunity to run on my business as well.
That allow me to use my skills and knowledge from my responsible position, and it also can help me to improve my ability for my better career in the future.
To make decision by myself, in which I will feel happy, where I will a good relation with my team, and that will enable me to give back to my community.
To be financially stable.
It's the job that will allow me to have a good self-development.
A job that can earn more money to have my family, make me happy to enjoy working. My qualities are passion and dedicated.
I'm always eager to learn more, and thus I take responsibility for everything I do.
I am never late. I have a good communication and I'm respectful to the other people.
Honestly, hardworking, and passionate.
I'm always trying to be enthusiastic every day to complete my work perfectly, and also I believe that team spirit will be my great asset for my future employer.
Thank you,
So I would like to thank very much the school who helped us to produce this video, as we could not wish any better introduction for our panel discussion, which will be about how to further develop a human-centered approach to the sector's recovery. Graham, I let you introduce the two first speakers.
Thank you very much, Sophie. And now it's time to move to the panel discussion. And we have with us the three great speakers. The first is Kun Orapin Musiknavabutr. I'm sorry, I keep making that mispronunciation of the name. I do apologize. Kun Orapin is the group director of People and Culture for Anantara Vacation Club. That's a brand of minor hotels. Kun Orapin is a passionate and results-oriented HR professional who has put her competencies at the service of her collaborators' development and well-being for more than 20 years. Our second speaker is Ms. Makiko Matsumoto, employment specialist at the International Labour Organization in Bangkok. Over the previous years, Makiko has been actively supporting research and policy dialogues to inform the formulation of employment policies and strategies. She recently led analysis on COVID-19 and employment in the tourism sector in Asia and the Pacific. Sophie?
Thank you, Graham. I would like to introduce our last speaker, Mr. Jorely Mathew, who is Area Director for Us Engagement Thailand and Group Director of Learning and Development at Soneva Resorts. Jorely is actually passionate about sustainability and human capital development, and he has more than 25 years of experience in academics, hotel operations, training, and human resources across the globe, including in India, the Maldives, the Seychelles, Jordan, and Thailand. Welcome, Jorely.
Thank you.
And this panel discussion is going to be moderated by Mr. Roy Ariel. Roy has dedicated the past decade on sustainable tourism and responsible travel. As General Manager of the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, a leading organization promoting sustainable tourism at global level, he works very closely with key governmental agencies as well as influential companies in order to mainstream and promote adherence to sustainability standards in travel and tourism. Welcome, Roy. So thank you to all our speakers for being with us today. And Roy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sophie and Graham. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Industry Insight panel discussion. The panel discussion will be followed by a Q&A session, and you are invited to submit your questions through the chat box. For those that are unfamiliar with Zoom, you will notice at the bottom of the screen, you have a toolbar. At the very bottom of that toolbar, you have a Q&A function that you can use to submit any question during the time of the speaking, but we'll have it answered at the end. In this panel, we will discuss how can we further develop the human-centered approach to the crisis and to the sector's recovery, especially with reference to youth employment. In the year 2020, industry challenges and solutions should be aligned with sustainability practices in mind. In other words, sustainable tourism. Sustainability in tourism does not only refer to environmental aspects of the industry, but also social and cultural aspect of the destination and its people. The UN Global Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, are 17 interconnected goals that encompass all aspects. Likewise, the GSTC criteria, which is the Global Sustainable Standards for Travel and Tourism, is also divided into 4 pillars. The first one refers to sustainable management, the second, socio-economical sustainability, the third, cultural sustainability, and the fourth, environmental sustainability. So we can see that there is a holistic approach when we speak about sustainable tourism, and it's clearly relevant to our sector's human resources. Just a quick example that in the GSTC criterion, A4 is about staff management, and criterion B7 is about decent work. I also share the link in the chat box for those that want to download the translation of the criteria that can be useful for anyone. And with this in mind, thinking that with the holistic perspective of sustainability, I would like to start with the first question to our panelists. Mr. Jorely and Kun Orapin, in terms of human resources, it seems that the crisis will accelerate some trends that were already emerging before the pandemic. One of them is the increased need for staff to be able to multitask, as tourism and hospitality businesses will have to operate with reduced headcounts. And I was wondering, what impact will that have on human resources? Mr. Jorely, you can begin.
Okay, thank you, Roy. I think you stressed on 3 points: the need for multitasking, the working conditions, and the career prospects. Well, I cannot generalize for this entire hospitality industry, as there are specialist skills, but definitely there is far more skills and competencies that could be combined and be multi-skilled. Talking about the current trends, the current and immediate need for most industries, including hospitality, you can see that digital and contactless payments happenings, safety systems and data protection in place, remote working, most of us work from or all the time, but more frequently, and more use of distance and online learning. And we use the vivid communication tools, and telehealth is coming much prominent, and online entertainment, including at Soneva, we even do a virtual wine tasting. So even for hotels and resorts who would not like to have a multi-scale staff, even now, be it additional language competency, ability to support other verticals. So this expectation may rise as the manning budgets will be constantly reviewed and the productivity evaluated more than ever before. And it's also the responsibility of hospitality schools to train students for additional competencies besides normally their key area of specialization or choice. When you talk about working conditions, I would say this is largely depend on the employer, as it is today, whether it is the brand or the management at each unit. Certainly, employee wellness is going to be a key component because of the pandemic, which you can already see happening. The third point which you asked is regarding the career prospects. I see it on a positive note. Like if you have more skills, you have more value and better prospects.
Thank you very much. And Kun Orapin, what's your view on this?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Jeremy. So to elaborate more further from what Jorely has already mentioned, I think we all agree that the industry facing faster and bigger challenging, and as well as the opportunity. As Madhu mentioned, opportunity is now the key word in this current world situations. I would like to highlight further on the three areas of the impact. That firstly is about the skill need that we are talking a lot, and the career perspective and working condition. So the skill that we would need to bring further our business to survive in these difficult situations and going forward is that we need to have our people to have the entrepreneurship skill and know to drive for the result. On top of this, we are talking a lot about hyper collaboration skill, adaptability skill, flexibility skill, and also the keyword of the digital and technical savvy, innovative in terms of working and servicing. And never forget that it's all time that the skill need in our industry is the customer focused. And on top of this, we need to be, we need people to have the skill of high curiosity and always questions that how they would make themselves to be able to stay ahead of the curve. And that is all about the skill. Looking at the career perspective, I would see this point as that right now, it's later than you have long-term experience in the business or in the industry. Is your core knowledge, as Jorely already mentioned, the core knowledge that we require for the business industry nowadays, and including their great attitude. That is going to be the key to make them success in our current industry. So at this point, I think it's very highly motivating for our young worker who will be entering in the business or already in the business. The third part is that what I want to highlight is the working condition. Looking back at our HR or our people and culture leader role, I would say that instead of we are working on the policy and procedure, like office perk, administrative part, it will be moving more on the part of the business strategy to ensure that we assist our people to be able to help them to that they're able to handle their own well-being. Because of the current situation, bring them with the technology and everything, bring them to be on all the time on work, you know, because of even they are not in the office, they are all the time at work, they are always at work. So we need to help them to integrate this into their daily life, including the COVID pandemic that helped them. Not help them, but make them stress so high. So I think the well-being part of the HR leader or people and culture role leader is very important one. Thank you.
Thank you very much for elaborating on this. And I think now I will address the question to Makiko-san. Recently, there was a report by the ILO, COVID-19 and the tourism sector. And over there, it stated that the high incidence of informal working arrangements in the tourism sector due to part to its seasonality combined with weak regulation and enforcement and labor organization is a challenge. And decent work deficits such as excessively long working hours, low wages, lack of social protection, and gender-based discrimination are most pronounced in the informal economy. Migrant workers, women, and youth are more vulnerable to informal or casual employment. And I would like to ask you, how can we protect people at a time when they are financially vulnerable and desperate for jobs?
Hello. Yeah, thank you for the question. For this one, I'll provide a little bit of a macro overview. As ILO, we deal with the government, but also our constituent consists of the workers and the employers organizations. So it's a kind of tripartite body, and policies are set over there. So in this kind of crisis, and particularly the current one, it is a position that the government has a major role to play in protecting people. But as you can see, it has been very difficult, maybe if not impossible, to have a absolutely right risk mitigation strategy that minimize risks to health, to livelihood, to participation in education, and so on. So to make sure that, you cannot just wait for these, policy responses, because young people are in need of support, whether it's livelihood or training. I think we are also promoting more social dialogue between the employers and the workers and the youth themselves at the sectoral level or at the enterprise level. So one type of policy intervention that has been used to reach out to youth in need of income has been this kind of cash transfer, amplified or mean tested, depending on the country. But this is a kind of extraordinary measure which cannot be repeated forever and needs to be overcome in the medium term by greater participation of young people in the social insurance mechanism or social protection mechanism. And actually, in fact, this is the one major step to formalization of employment. In the current crisis, however, the survival of businesses is also paramount because otherwise we cannot protect employment. And the other group of policy responses attempted to relieve the cash flow challenges of the enterprises, so to protect or help the survival of enterprises during the mandatory or somewhat self-enforced business closure period. So they included relief on taxes, social protection contributions, deferral rent payment, deferral interest payment, so on, depending on the country. And the intention was to be as helpful as possible for the small and medium-sized enterprises, combined with other employment protection measures, such as wage subsidies. And of course, finally, some countries have been using, in the last 3 or 4 months, tourism sector specific programs like, go to travel or, whatever different countries call it, to encourage greater domestic travel and the use of tourism related services.
I see. So let me continue with another question related to that. And what do you see are opportunities and challenges brought by this crisis to facilitate such transition from the informal to the formal economy, especially, of course, for young workers?
I think one opportunity we see is, for instance, I think in Thailand, for instance, when there was that moment of cash transfer and a lot of people registered. So there is an opportunity for formalization combined with some incentives. But this kind of incentive has to be sufficient and easily accessible to support both the workers and the enterprises, so that they can really participate more in the system of social insurance or to register in the case of business unit. And, either way, this is the formalization of employment or the formalization of enterprises. And ideally, the governance should be ready to connect, for example, young people in need to other forms of support, such as, access to training courses for young people so that they can weather the crisis, or, for example, another support to young entrepreneurs to adjust their business operation practice to the current context. And I think this needs to go together with the recognition of the importance of participation in the social insurance system, which really acts as a buffer in downturns so that participation can be sustained. The challenge has been that if the support package provided is perceived to be insufficient or not easily accessible or too difficult in relation to the needs for income or information or what kind of skills upgrading opportunities, young workers, entrepreneurs, they just may not decide not to participate.
Thank you, Makiko-san. So Makiko has just provided an insight into what could be done at a more macro level to create an enabling environment for decent work of the most vulnerable population, especially young people. But let's move a little bit, take this question to the industry. And Mr. Jorely, I would like to ask you at the company level, is there anything that can be done to better address the needs of the most vulnerable in the workspace?
Thank you, Roy, for the question. Absolutely, yes. I would pick 2 points from what Makiko-san has mentioned as protection of vulnerable and training for youth. And on this point, let me share a few examples where Soneva is supporting the vulnerable and the needy. We have the internship program for women, that we hire women in normally male-dominated teams, give them stipend, full board accommodation, travel arrangements. And we encourage the employment of women across all teams so that they can be trained and they can be further employed with us. And our goal in our resorts is to have higher percentage of women, particularly. And in Thailand, our objective is 50% women, and currently we are at 30% lady host, 38% lady host. We have, at the beginning of the session, Madhu Rajesh mentioned that Soneva is an active member of the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, and we have been running the YCI Youth Career Initiative program for several years now in Thailand and the Maldives. So this is something which helps us identify students who are vulnerable and get them training in our resorts and get them prepared for the industry. Besides that, we also have the Soneva Junior Host Program, and this is for the underprivileged and the vulnerable, basically young boys and girls. We recently have a young boy rescued from a fishing boat in Cambodia. We had orphans and also those rehabilitated from prostitution or subjected to child abuse. So we work along with LPN, the Labor Protection Network, and Plan International. And as part of our social responsibility at Soneva, as a best practice, we keep aside 0.5% of our revenue for social and environmental activities. And talking about the training for youth, vocational training and employment for students, we support students from alternate education centers across Thailand. And another example is the ASSET-H&C in Mesot, which is also a member of the organizing group ASSET. We have now many students who from across such institutes in Thailand coming to a Thai resort. And overall, I would say that we have now more reason to support the vulnerable and to uphold the human rights with fair wages and good working conditions. And most companies aspire to be a preferred employer. So how can you be a preferred employer without addressing these things? Thank you.
Thank you, Jorely, for these very spot-on examples on what businesses can do to support that. So this event is meant to create dialogue between different stakeholders, and we're lucky to have among the audience schools that are dedicated to support the socioeconomic integration of vulnerable youth by equipping them with the necessary skills to find sustainable employment. So I would like to ask now a concluding question to all three speakers. Ask you also to kindly provide a short reply. What role should educational institutions play to support a human-centered approach to the sector's recovery? And I'd like to start with Makiko-san.
Okay, thank you. Well, broadly speaking, I think education institutions, they can definitely be part of a broader stakeholder group that includes the TVET, the education training, of course, the employers, the workers, the youth, young people, and other sectoral bodies or occupational associations to develop an appropriate training package for different tourism sector workers, and perhaps even take part in its delivery, and depending on the content. And I think to do so, the education institutions can also play an active role in assessing the current needs and gaps for skills in the tourism sector, together, of course, with the other stakeholders. And I think the aim is to meet the skill gap that the sector may face in the recovery phase and in the near future and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. And Orapin, what is your view on that?
All right. Thank you, Loy. So with these questions, I have to say that in the past, we have been successfully working with the Education Institute in many aspects, especially for the internship. But with the current situation and going forward, I think the important role of the Education Institute is that to change with the change. The way we're working, the way we're servicing will be changed. So I think we need to look into the modifications of the course curriculum in order that the Education Institute can modify the curriculum with the responsibility of producing a student into the industry according to what industry require for now and going forward. And secondly is that I think the role is that in the past we may work on a different end. One is the theoretical and another one is the practical. So I think going forward we need to be more closer partnership, working together closer, and so that the Education Institute can really train students to support the industry. So going forward is not just only training the technical skill or hard skill, but we need to train people as a whole, as a holistic, including the soft skill. Train in early enough in the early stage from the Education Institute. This, I mean that including the skill of like communications, skill of like critical thinking, and build them on the growth mindset. Right? And importantly, also the emotional intelligence. We haven't talked about this much in the past because we focus in the technical skill to serve the industry. But because of the consumer or customer behavior change, so we need to change. The curriculum need also to change. Importantly, the digital word is not just a big buzzword, but it's really come to play in life. So this one, students need to be trained also how to use the digital as a human-centric. So students need to be able to have the skill that prepare them to have skill that they can understand to utilize the AI, the digital in nowadays world. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jorely, may you kindly share your thoughts on the role of educational institutions here?
Absolutely. I take the point from Kun Orapin is change with the change. And she highlighted about the break the theory practice divide and the build more partnership with industry, developing faculty, and so on. I can't agree with this more because I worked for over a decade as an associate professor in the hospitality education. I recently came across the EHL, the prestigious Swiss hospitality school research, and in their Lausanne report, they mention about the rising fragility. So this pandemic in itself, the recession as part of it as a result, and they highlight the skill gaps as one of the key elements besides the environmental factors. And the hypothesis of this study is vulnerability is on the rise, which means there should be improved resilience, and they outline that some of the factors as the crisis resistance or prevention because nobody saw it coming. And the need for diversification, and earlier Madhu talked about it, the need for diversification of perhaps skills or skills upgradation, and even localization of some of those elements. Now, coming to hospitality schools, should find skill gaps in their students vis-a-vis perhaps their course curriculum, along with the industry partners, and address them. I'm currently involved with 2 universities in their curriculum development, which I think most of them are going to review in a similar pattern. From a skills perspective, more need would be there for customer experience, facility management, business stimulation, and Orapin mentioned about emotional intelligence, and soft skill has been there, but more than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jorely, Orapin, and Makiko-san. Those insights you have shared are really important for all of us and, of course, useful. And with that, I would like to give the floor back to Graham and Sophie.
Roy, thank you very much. That was a wonderful discussion, and thank you to all the panelists. Very insightful. Once again, a lot of the private sector perspectives, as well as the more formal sector perspectives, and throughout how we need to be taking of opportunities to make change within the change we're going through. Thank you all very, very much. Sophie?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, everyone, for this insightful discussion. As announced, we are now going to have a Q&A session. So for all our audience, if you want to submit your question, please use the Q&A function to submit all your questions to our panelists, as well as Madhu is going to join us for that session. Madhu, I invite you to turn on your camera. We will actually start with a first question that was submitted before the webinar by one of our member schools, PSC Institute, which is asking, well, which is saying that COVID-19 has accelerated the use of new technologies and applications into hotel operations in order to ensure customer safety. Can you share about the approach taken to help your staff adjust to this change? Ultimately, this would help schools like us to better prepare our students for their future career in the sector. And I believe that this question may be interesting for Jorely and for Orapin.
Well, thank you. I have seen a large number of manuals coming out during the pandemic, highlighting about the new normal SOPs and the ways in which they have to adapt to the kind of service models, the SOPs being rewritten and new processes. And this included even the technology side of it, which we never fully considered. And today, I think each one is learning from other organizations and then having much technology imparted to it. Yes, this is going to stay for some time, and so we hope that it is not going to be forever. So, but then some of these technology are certainly going to be there. Like example, the use of this platform, that people have been much more friendly and user to a platform like Zoom, for example, and online learning, for instance. This may stay for some period, and people are going to be much more positive and taking lead out of it. So it across the departments, I would say there is a technology intervention where it is, but I would say from a hospitality point, nobody can replace hospitality with just the delivery, and the human element of it is the key. So I would think there should be a fine balance where technology ends and the human hospitality service is there.
Any additional thought? Yeah,
Yes, yeah, thank you, Sophie. I would say that the technology will be coming in, of course. However, we are in the people industry, and we have our duty and responsibility to help our customer to create a better experience by using the digital and technology. So for example, I give you just simple example. We need to just look into our way of working and way of servicing. Nowadays, we are not serving any more menu in our restaurant. We are just touchless using the QR code. And this would need help from our people in our hotel, in our industry, to assist our customer to have this better experience using the new technology. So if looking into how we're going to make this happening is you need to look into the whole process and the procedure where the technology coming in, and then start from there, creating better experience for our customer. And that we call that we keep human center in our industry. I think that's from my view. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A second question, maybe? Well, there is another question that says, I want to invest more in my staff because it is necessary for my business survival, and I also want to contribute to my community. How can I communicate about these efforts to improve my branding and enhance my customers' loyalty? Maybe Madhu would have an insight on this.
Yes, absolutely. I think what we saw even before COVID, and I'm confident we will see this increasingly happening post the pandemic. The consumers are interested in what role have any business, any brands played in the pandemic, and how have they supported their local communities. So that is certainly something which is which is quite strong. The sentiment is quite strong right now, and it will become stronger in the times to come. And in that, the role that hotels have played, whereas they were used as rehab, centers for quarantine, for shelters for homeless people, support that they provided to medical professionals that needed to stay. All of those actions have been noticed quite significantly in the past months, and I feel the way hotels continue to engage and create opportunities for young people in their communities post-pandemic, as we look at economic recovery, that will certainly be a big part of the branding. If I may add, what I feel in my experience, hotels do a lot of work in the background, but sometimes they don't communicate that very effectively in very simple and clear language that the consumer would understand. And I think that's also an opportunity for hotels to really look at how they showcase some of the work that they're doing so that people are aware of it, both from on the websites, but in their reports, but equally as part of the day-to-day consumer experience that the guest has while they're at the hotel. So that's probably something where I feel hotels can do a bit more of.
Thank you very much, Madhu. We now have a question from Fabian, who's saying, what is the current involvement of the private sector in the development of curriculum, training content, or training of the trainer's capacity to address all the new skills needed by the private sector? Again, I think that the best representative for that would be Jorely and Kun Orapin. Can you share your thoughts about this question with us?
Well, okay. I think, as I mentioned before, that the education institute need to change with the change, right? So just give simple example, terminology in the curriculum, in the language, the terminology used in the hospitality business, that will be changed, right? The example of, like, you used to train the student on how to serve. The way of how to serve now will be different, because people will care more about their personal hygiene, will care more about their safety. And this thing is all you need to look into as a curriculum. And this is, I'm talking the hard skill, the technical skill. On top of that, I have mentioned already that we need to also look into the soft skill part of our student. What is required in the business? I have mentioned we need hyper collaborative, we need entrepreneur, we need people who know how to drive for the result. We need people that engage with our business as their own business, and that really have a great attitude to bring business to survive through the crisis. They need to be trained on how they will make or do their work to help the business to survive. and even move the business going forward in this big opportunity. Even in the crisis, there is always opportunity there. So mindset of opportunity, they must have to. So I think this thing is, I don't know if answer the questions, but it's just my view on how the Education Institute can help to prepare young worker to be more ready than in the past all day. Thank you.
If I may come in on this a little bit, a curriculum has already been prepared on this. So one of the pieces of work that we've been doing with our member companies over the last 12 to 18 months is really looking at the soft skills that are relevant for disadvantaged young people looking to start their careers in the hospitality industry. So we worked with all our members. We mapped entry-level soft skills that were valuable to the hotel companies, and we came up with a curriculum that we've developed over the last 18 months with support from our membership, both financial as well as know-how support. And we are beginning to pilot that in our programs, and that looks at really what are the soft skills, what are the basic English language skills and terminology that's needed for hospitality employees, confidence, basic hygiene, attitude, all of those really that are delivered through a face-to-face model or a blended model of delivery in some cases for about 200 hours. And then that leads up to on-the-job training in hotels. And we are piloting that curriculum in our programs over the next 6 to 9 months, and we hope to be able to launch it at some point in 2021. And when it's launched, it will be available free of charge to anyone across the world that wants to use it through us. And that's the industry's commitment to recognizing those skills and then developing them and making it available to everyone to use.
Jorely, any additional comments?
Just to add on from Orapin and Madhu mentioned, as I mentioned earlier, I worked in hospitality education for a decade. And coincidentally, I will be in Maysot from the 1st to the 5th of December, working with the HTCT, which is a member of ASSET. One of the purpose of the visit is that my voluntary work there to help support, develop the curriculum and working with students, the local communities, and develop that. So I hope that clearly outlines or explains the specific question, what is the private sector doing? And earlier I mentioned also associated with other universities in curriculum development. So if anybody wants assistance, I'm more than happy to help and assist. That's all I can say. I think from the current situation, a lot of hotel schools are reviewing it, their curriculum. They have a fantastic syllabus and things going on, but they just need the industry input from, as all of you mentioned, the relevance to the new situation and how they adapt, and particularly with the skills, the new skills, technology, and so on. So certainly, I think the private sector can contribute a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have another question, anonymous, but I suspect it's coming from the educational sector as well. The question says, what do you think will be the perspective of travel, tourism, and hospitality industry taking interns and giving opportunity during the current pandemic? How should we approach organization for internships?
I would answer that. I would say directly with us, at least with Soneva, as the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, we don't take from any recruiters where they would charge. Normally, even for internship, many recruiters charge them for that, which is very fairly simple to contact the careers or the respective HR or learning departments. So I think that's one step in which to encourage, support those students for the learning. In terms of internship, the periods of time tend to be, different. It can last from 6 weeks of vocational training to a complete industrial training for 6 months to, I've seen up to a year's time. And going in advance, approaching the hotel schools directly is the way, so that there is no mediatory, somebody who's benefiting, which is against, I think, one of the principles of Sustainable Hospitality Alliance.
Anyone else want to react on that? Okay, well, in this case, I think, well, it's already time to ask a concluding question. And I have one which is, I think, the perfect one. It has been submitted by another ASSET-H&C member, which is École d'Hôtellerie et de Tourisme Paul Dubrul. It's from one of their teachers who's saying, after the outbreak of COVID-19, many youth are demotivated joining the tourism industry. How do we remotivate them? And I feel that that's an answer that everyone could provide in this panel.
Okay, I would go first. Whether it is this pandemic or any kind of situation in the past, which has always bounced back, and we are not going to have hotels closed down like this forever. We open our doors for all our resorts, and we are doing extremely well. We have one of the best quarters in the last couple of years now. And so I'm sure many hotels are going to slowly open up and then go back to the old abnormal, I would say. So there is definitely, it is going to bounce forward, and the industry is going to come back. So I don't think there should be any concern. It's a matter of time that we first get out of this particular situation. And I think we would be much more swifter, much more open, and we will have anxiety with regards to the skill sets and so on. I personally don't feel at the end, it is customer service. It has to have the personalization and the element which is going to be stay there forever.
Thank you, Jorely. Anyone else who would like to add on that?
Yeah, just one thing that, of course, this will not last forever. It feels very painful at the moment, I think. But during the recovery phase, I think tourism industry will probably, it might take some time at the beginning. I mean, that's, I think, thinking that, yeah, next year it might be a little bit slow going, but once it gets going, it will come back. And I think the important point, I mean, I don't want to dictate to the industry, but I mean, perhaps from our perspective, the important point is having that level of preparedness, you know, having a plan, or, you know, what do we do when we have such a level of crisis, how to deal with the workers, you know, do you put them on leave? Do you put them, you know, have a clear plan in place, and that is well understood by the workers themselves as well. So I hope, yeah, that there will be some motivation coming back fairly soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If I may build on that, I'll say, you know, of course, the pandemic is at an unprecedented scale, but having recognized that this is not the first time that there's been an economic downturn, and this will most certainly not be the last. And, you know, when I look back at my own career, working in the Middle East during the SARS crisis, during the Iraq War, and many other, you know, 9/11, many other situations, I think I learned the most in those periods, and about how do businesses cope, how do you support recovery, and those are very, very critical skills that hold good regardless of the situation. And I've personally found myself going back to some of those very often over the last few months. So I would really encourage young people of today, as hard as it seems, look at this as being a fantastic opportunity to learn yourself. Ask the right questions, learn from the environment around you, see how your managers and your general managers and everybody else is coping, what leadership is working for you, what appeals to you, and how do you define your own style? Because there will be a time as you go through your careers when you look back and you will reflect on these and find it really valuable. So, you know, I think that's the opportunity in this pandemic that we're living through, and lessons for future generations to come there.
Let me share my view on this. I think this pandemic is just giving us a time break that we can sit back and reassess ourselves, reassess our own skill. As I mentioned before, that the long-term experience is may not relevant for the future. So it's time that you sit back, you reassess what is your knowledge and skill, and what is the industry will require to recover once the business is back, once the people can travel, and it will come back. So I would say that keep your mind positive and strong, and then keep on learning new skill, and multi your skill even more, and that you will not be off track for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Roy, maybe a few last words?
Yes, I very much agree with what Madhu was saying about the challenges that we've had in the past, and this is definitely not going to be the last one that we experience as an industry, as humanity. And we need to understand that we're all in it together. Doesn't matter in which country we are all being affected, and it doesn't matter in which class we're all being affected, differently of course, but affected. And I think that is something that we should remember and cherish, that we are in it together for the bad and for the good. So we should be supporting each other as well.
Thank you very much, Roy. I think it was a perfect conclusion for this Q&A session. It's for now time to wrap up. And well, I would like to thank again all our speakers for their sharing, which was very insightful. I also would like to thank again all the people who contributed to the success of this event. And thank you all for being with us for now 1 hour and a half. As I mentioned earlier, we are now going to have a networking session. And for this, we will need you to connect to another meeting room. So if you look at the chat box here down on the screen, you will see that we have shared with you another link. So you just have to click on that link. You will then reach a meeting room from where you will be redirected to a smaller breakout room, where a facilitator will welcome you for a pleasant chat about the topic of today. So we hope that we are going to see many of you over there. Again, the link is in the chat box. So see you in a few seconds, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophie. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.